We have to be people who are genuinely moved by compassion, just like Jesus. See, we're on this journey right now, and we're talking about Jesus on display. That means people get to see Jesus through us. That there's something about Jesus in our lives that people get to see Jesus. Because that's the word Christian. The word Christians are followers of Jesus. Those days in the book of Acts, they were first called Christians in Antioch by the unbelievers. Unbelievers looked at this group of people and said, oh, they look like the followers of Christ. There was something about them. Each one of you is responsible for that, to look like Jesus. Now, some of us can sit here and point fingers. She has to be like Jesus. She has to be like Jesus. Oh, he definitely. See, that is not the point. See, many of us love to escape. Put the responsibility on somebody else. It won't work. You have to have a desire this morning. Say, I want to be like Jesus. Right? And Matthew 9:35-36 says this. Then Jesus went about all the cities and villages, teaching in their synagogues, preaching the gospel of the kingdom and healing every sickness and every disease among the people. But verse 36, but when he saw the multitudes, he was moved with compassion for them. You and I, when we see 22 million people, which is a huge multitude, you and I must have compassion for them. Because if you and I don't have compassion, we will never do anything for them. But murmur, complain, and find all their faults. What they do is what they're doing because they have no revelation of Him. But the question is, what will you do for them? What will I do for them? Why do we struggle with compassion? Like I said, there are a few who are fully running already. But majority, let's say 90% of us are not. See, one of the reasons why we lack compassion is because we are so busy. We are so busy with our own pursuits that we fail to take enough time to see the needs of others around us. I'll tell you this little story I read. It says the story is told about a young man and a very successful executive named Josh, who was driving his sleek black 12-cylinder Jaguar. It was only 2 months old. He was watching carefully for little kids darting out from between parked cars and slowly slowing down when he thought he saw something. As his car passed a spot, because it was a spot where children play, no child darted out, but suddenly out of nowhere a brick came flying and bam! Knocked the door. It smashed into his shiny side door of his car. Josh slammed on his brakes and his gears back into reverse, bringing the Jaguar back to a spot where the brick had been thrown. Josh jumped out of the car, grabbed the kid, pushed him up against the wall and said, "Who are you and what are you doing? What do you think you're doing?" With great anger, he went on, "That's my new Jaguar and the brick you threw is going to cost you a lot of money. Why did you throw it?" And the kid said, "Please, sir, I'm sorry. I didn't know what else to do. I threw the brick because no one would stop." Tears rolling down the boy's chin as he pointed out the parked car. "It's my brother, sir," he said. "He rolled off the curb and fell out of his wheelchair, and I can't lift him up." Sobbing, the boy pleaded, "Would you please help me get him back onto his wheelchair? He's hurt and he's too heavy for me." Moved beyond words, Josh tried desperately to swallow the rapidly swelling lump in his throat. Straining, he lifted the young man back into his chair, took out his handkerchief, wiped the scrapes and cuts, checking to see that everything else was okay. He then walked with them to make sure that the younger brother was able to get him back home all right. It was a long and slow walk back to his sleek, beautiful, black, shining 12-cylinder Jaguar. Josh never fixed that side of the door. He kept the dent to remind him not to grow through life so fast that someone has to throw a brick to get his attention again. I think that's a very powerful story. And I think at this season, God is saying to us as people, stop, slow down. There are people who've fallen out of wheelchairs. There are people who need crutches, who have fallen from their crutches. And there's no one to stop. There's no one to pick them up. See, Jesus shares a story about a Jewish man, a story he talks about, who was traveling from one city to another on the way to Jericho. And it's on the way he gets mugged and beaten up and thrown on the side of the road. And while he's beaten up and bleeding and gasping for his life, it says a religious leader went by. A teacher of the law went by. And both these dignified men of God did absolutely nothing because it was inconvenient. Finally, an outcast, a Samaritan, a man who was looked down by the Jews, who were considered half-breeds, he walked by. But you know what? This man couldn't walk past. He had this compassion. He had godly compassion that got him to get down on his knees, carry and lift up this man, take him to a house and get him cared for. If you're like me and never went to Sunday school, then you won't know the story. It's called the story of the Good Samaritan. And Jesus is telling us the same story. He's saying, how many Joshes are here? Maybe we don't have fancy sports cars, but we have busy lives. Some of us say, "Oh, Pastor, I have too many problems to stop to look at other people's problems. You don't know the problems I have." The kingdom of God is about you seeing through the eyes of Jesus And then knowing that Jesus will look after you as you do what He's called you to do. Seek first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all that you need will be given to you. See, you can be busy with all that you need, but you will still come to church on Sunday like a good Christian. You still give, but you won't live the exciting life Jesus has for you. You won't. See, and I believe there is this time God is calling us, church. He's really calling us as a people.